Hello, my name is Dr. Mike Reichel. I'm the founder and director of the ECU Family Autism Center. Having an autism child development center in Eastern North Carolina would be a crown jewel in our efforts beyond early identification to serve children and families. It will allow certain kinds of therapy which are limited in terms of availability, limited by cost and insurance coverage, limited by providers. It would allow us to really focus treatment efforts for younger children, the younger the better, but also for older children as well. I am thrilled to support ACEs for Autism, a local effort with far-reaching ability to serve children and families in our region. It's spearheaded by one family in particular, but it actually can potentially bring the dreams of so many other families that I know to fruition by having access to a treatment center. We cannot offer that at the ECU Family Autism Center. ACEs for Autism can and will make it happen.
Michael was diagnosed when he was 2, but I knew that something wasn't right when he was around 9 or 10 months old. He seemed advanced before that, but then suddenly he started losing skills, so I actually thought maybe he had a brain tumor. After a week-long evaluation when he was a year old, they came in and said, "Your son has autism." The next thing that the doctor said was, "I know this is hard to hear." And I kind of blanked out the rest of the day. We were living in Baltimore at the time, and we were fortunate. I was working for Johns Hopkins, and the Kennedy Krieger Institute was down the street. They told me about some research. They said if I joined the research study, I could get funding for what we call ABA, and I didn't know what it was. It didn't make any sense to me, but whatever somebody offered me, I said, let's do it. And I saw a huge difference from that. But what I also noticed was that there were other families who didn't have what I had, who couldn't get any help. At that time, the incidence rate was thought to be 1 in 10,000 is what they said to me at the point of diagnosis. But what that also meant was that nobody understood. People would stare, the behaviors. We go to the grocery store, people are making comments and saying, why doesn't she discipline her child? And so I started making crazy t-shirts that said, I have autism, what's your excuse? And I would do Autism 101 in the middle of the store, and years later I found out that it was the fluorescent lights that were making Michael act the way he was acting. So now that he's 20 and he understands that he's a young man, or at least he tells me that he understands that he's a young man, Michael likes to play basketball. He could shoot free throws like nobody's business, and I couldn't understand it, but he has an eye for that. So he loves that. He loves to bowl. I think that is one of the more fun group things that he does. Having an ABA center in Eastern North Carolina would give families who have received an early diagnosis a place to go for therapy to get help with what they now know is an autism diagnosis.
We went for a 2-year-old checkup, and I noticed that he wasn't verbal. He had his own language. He had what they call jargon. And he understood what he said, but nobody else understood it. When Corbett started getting therapy at an early age, we looked for the milestones. We looked for quick results, and that's not always the case. But, the first little things that happen, first words, we don't have the meltdowns because we're just pointing versus saying what you want. They're huge. It brings tears to your eyes because it's something you've waited for, that you see other kids that are doing that, and you've got playmates that do that, and then you've got yours that screams. So when we did get verbal acknowledgement for things, it was a humongous relief, to say the least. Corbett, he has such a vast variety of things that he likes to do. Goes from one end to the other. He's into sports, of course. He loves ECU. He goes to basketball, football, baseball, pretty much all the games. He loves them. He's there cheering them on. And he also loves the weather. He is very big into the weather and science end of it as to what makes things happen, and very technical as far as detail oriented and about every aspect of the weather. I think it's very important to have a autism developmental center here in Eastern North Carolina. The financial responsibilities here for parents are huge with kids with autism for therapies, and I think that the knowledge that the parents will gain, as well as the therapy and the advancement that the children will gain from the therapy, will be huge. I think that everybody can learn and grow from a developmental center here.
Lucas was born on March 23rd, 2006. He was a little bit jaundiced when he was born, but other than that, we weren't suspecting anything, and we thought we were bringing home a nice, healthy baby. A little after his first birthday is when we really started noticing some changes. I noticed that he wasn't progressing like his older brother was, so that's kind of when the trigger went off. I happened to be driving down the road one day and saw a billboard that said 1 in 88 children are diagnosed with autism. When I got home, I Googled it, and come to find out, as I'm going down this checklist and I'm saying to myself, oh my goodness, I think my son has autism. I didn't know what autism was. It really kind of hit me really hard because I didn't know what to expect. Having an autistic child is so expensive. The therapies are so expensive. The schools are so expensive. I had looked into the autism school in Cary, and I was like, who can afford $55,000 a year? I don't even make that in a year. All of those things are running through your mind because you're sitting there thinking, I can't even provide what's best for my child, at this age, because early intervention was so important, and yet there was nothing there. Having a child on the spectrum doesn't just affect that child. I do have a son who isn't on the spectrum, so had Lucas been able to utilize early intervention in an ABA center, that would have freed up my time that I was able to spend with my oldest son, who, as a parent, you feel like you're neglecting that child because you spend so much time with your special needs child because of the therapies and the doctor's appointments, and trying to make sure that, they're just getting the basics. It's just a very overwhelmingly stressful situation. And so having an ABA center would have brought me to a level where I did not feel like I had no exit.
Yeah, we had the same hopes and dreams as any parents, that Samuel would laugh, run and play sports, play games. We would walk in the house from work, and Samuel would be in his own little world. He'd stare off at the walls. That was part of his autism. You're like, is this the way our son's gonna be for his whole life?
We knew that something was wrong with Samuel. When the doctors told us autism, my heart sank, but also it gave me hope to know that we finally know what's wrong with him, and we know that we could possibly find a way to help him.
I'll never forget when
We sat in the bed all night, cried the whole night. Just wondered what we're gonna do to help our son.
I just remember when he wouldn't let me hold him, and it was heartbreaking because that's all that I had wanted. I had wanted to rock him to sleep, and he didn't want me to touch him. He didn't want me to hold him. He didn't want me to play with him, and it was like he was locked inside.
He didn't want to be consoled. He wanted to be by himself. As parents, we knew we had to give Samuel a chance.
Within the first month of him starting ABA therapy, I remember he started using his words. He started saying hey and mama and bye, and it was the most amazing words that he could say. Just for him to even be able to communicate anything to me was just an incredible breakthrough for Samuel and for us as a family, because all of a sudden we were able to communicate, and all of a sudden we were able to get inside that little head of his and understand a little bit more about his personality and get to know him.
I remember his first hug when he came home from therapy, and on a Friday, him and Bobby came home, and he came in the house, and I kneel down and I say, "Give Daddy a hug," and put my arms around him, and he comes right up and just snuggles up to my chest. That's something that I'll never forget. And a lot of families, they take that for granted. They just, it happens natural for their child. It didn't happen natural for Samuel. It took work, it took therapy, and it made a huge difference.
Every day there's a new thing that he comes home with, a new sound, a new word, and he still has an incredibly long way to go, but he's completely changed, and it's amazing.
We still have hope for Samuel, that he'll be able to go to school. He'll be able to interact with his peers at school. That's what Samuel is now. He's a completely different boy. It's truly a miracle. The transformation that Samuel's made over the past year.
I never would have thought that, that he would be where he is right now. I mean, it's truly amazing where he is right now.